The day I married the love of my life was supposed to be the happiest day of mine. Instead, it became the moment my whole world cracked in half. When I saw my sister whispering into my husband's ear, her hand brushing against his sleeve, his jaw tightening as he looked away, something inside me froze. It wasn't jealousy. It was recognition. I'd seen that look before, years ago, when she used to borrow my clothes without asking. When she'd flash that same sweet smile that always got her out of trouble. Only this time, it wasn't my dress she'd stolen. It was my future. The music swelled, guests clapped, and the photographer's flash went off like lightning, capturing what they thought was a perfect moment. But all I could feel was the thundering in my chest, a rhythm out of sync with everything I had believed in. Before that day, my life was simple, maybe even ordinary, but it was mine. My name is Laura, and for most of my 32 years, I had lived quietly, working as a primary school teacher in our small town near the coast. My husband, or the man I thought would always be my husband, was Ethan. He was steady, kind, the kind of man who fixed leaky faucets and brewed coffee before I even got out of bed. We met when I was 26 at a local charity event, and after 3 years together, he proposed under a sky full of lanterns. If my life were a movie, that would have been the closing scene, the part where everything fades to gold. But life, I've learned, doesn't fade to gold. It burns, then rebuilds itself from ashes. My sister Chloe was my opposite in every way. 2 years younger, she was wild and dazzling, like a sparkler, bright, unpredictable, and impossible to hold for long. She worked as a travel influencer, always chasing the next sunrise, the next city, the next adventure. We were close once as children. But somewhere along the way, she started treating life like a competition, one I didn't even know I was part of. Still, when I got engaged, she cried genuine tears, or at least I thought so. She hugged me tightly and said, "You deserve this, Laura. You finally have someone who sees you." It never occurred to me that maybe she meant she wanted someone who saw her too. In the months leading up to the wedding, Chloe became my shadow. She came to every dress fitting, every cake tasting, every decision, even the ones I didn't invite her to. I remember how she'd stand in front of the mirror at the bridal boutique, running her fingers over the lace of my gown, her reflection overlapping mine. "This dress makes you look so pure," she'd said once, smiling at my reflection instead of me. Like someone who's never done a thing wrong. I laughed it off then. Because that's what sisters do. We ignore the small things, the comments that sting, because admitting they hurt means admitting something might be wrong. Ethan adored her too, in that friendly, familial way I thought was harmless. He said she reminded him of the adventurous side. I didn't show enough. I didn't mind. I liked that he could laugh with her. After all, we were family. And family meant safety. Or at least I used to believe that. A week before the wedding, Chloe offered to move in with us to help with last-minute prep. She said Ethan needed less stress, that I shouldn't burn myself out. I remember watching her at the kitchen counter that evening, barefoot, slicing lemons for his drink, humming some tune while he grilled steaks on the patio. The smell of seared meat and citrus filled the air, and for a second, it felt off. Too intimate. But then Ethan called out, "Honey, come try this." And just like that, I was back in the moment. I told myself I was lucky. I had a helpful sister and a caring fiancé. I had everything. But sometimes when you think you have everything, that's exactly when life decides to show you what nothing feels like. The first clue wasn't loud or obvious. It came in whispers, like a door creaking open just enough to let in a draft. 3 days before the wedding, I couldn't sleep. I went downstairs for water and saw the faint glow of light from the living room. I peeked in. Ethan and Chloe were on the couch, watching something on his laptop. They looked comfortable. Maybe too comfortable. Her feet tucked under her, his arm resting on the back of the sofa. They were laughing quietly at something I couldn't hear. When they noticed me, Chloe jumped up a little too fast.
"Oh."
"We were just editing the wedding playlist," she said, closing the laptop. Ethan smiled, sheepishly. "Yeah, we were trying to surprise you."
A surprise.
That word stayed with me. Later that night, I checked the laptop. The browser history was cleared. Ethan never did that. 2 nights later, while we were setting out name cards, Chloe mentioned Ethan's favorite dessert, lemon meringue pie, something I never told her. She said, "I made it for him last week when you were out with the girls." He couldn't stop eating it. I laughed awkwardly. "You mean the store-bought one?" She tilted her head, eyes gleaming. "No, the one I baked." It didn't sound like a lie. It sounded like pride. Still, I brushed it off. Because that's what love makes you do. It softens the edges of truth until it fits the shape of your heart. On the morning of the wedding, she came to my room early. Her hair was curled, her makeup flawless. She wore a soft pink robe with maid of honor, embroidered in gold. I was still in my slip, trembling with excitement and nerves. She hugged me from behind, resting her chin on my shoulder, looking at us in the mirror. "You're glowing," she said. I smiled. "It's the happiest day of my life." Her smile flickered, barely noticeable. Let's hope it stays that way. When I walked down that aisle and saw her lean close to Ethan, whispering, smiling, I felt the faintest tremor in my chest. I told myself it was nothing. That love required trust, even when it hurt a little. But when I looked into his eyes, I realized he wasn't looking back at me. He was looking at her. The first few days after the wedding were a blur. People always say marriage feels like waking up in a dream, but for me, it felt like waking up in someone else's. Ethan and I had planned a short honeymoon in the mountains, a quiet cabin tucked away from everything. Yet when the time came to leave, Chloe announced she couldn't find her passport for her next trip. She needed to stay in town an extra day. Could Ethan drop her at the airport before we went? It sounded innocent. But when we left for the cabin, I caught her reflection in the mirror. Her eyes lingered on him a little too long. He didn't notice. Or maybe he did. The drive was quiet. Ethan was distracted, checking his phone every few minutes. I told myself it was work. He had clients' deadlines. I had no reason to doubt him. But that night, when he went out to take a quick call, the silence stretched longer than the call itself. I sat there by the fireplace, the smell of burning pine heavy in the air, staring at the phone he'd left behind. It vibrated once. Then again. A message appeared. It wasn't from Chloe. It was from a contact saved as C. "C. I can still taste you." Did she notice? The world tilted. The fire crackled, hissing like it was mocking me. My fingers went cold, but I opened the chat anyway. The messages told a story I didn't want to read: late-night meetups, secret jokes, plans made right under my nose. And one that made my stomach drop. C. You'll marry her, and then we'll figure the rest out. E. I just need time. She doesn't suspect a thing. I felt like I couldn't breathe. My heart wasn't breaking quietly. It was shattering, each piece slicing through the person I thought I was. When Ethan came back inside, I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just looked at him, really looked, and realized the man in front of me was a stranger, wearing the face of someone I used to love. "Who's C?" I asked quietly. He froze. "What?" I lifted the phone, the screen still glowing. "You left this unlocked." His jaw tightened, his throat moved as he swallowed hard. "Lara, I can explain." "No," I said, my voice trembling. "You can't. Because there's no explanation that makes that okay." He ran his hands through his hair, stepping closer, voice dropping into that practiced softness he always used when he was cornered. "It was a mistake. It happened once." I laughed. It wasn't the kind of laugh that comes from amusement. It was sharp, hollow. "Once? You've been lying to me for months." "Lara, please. It didn't mean anything." "Then why did you marry me?" He didn't answer. He didn't have to. The silence between us said everything. I didn't tell him to leave. Not yet. I wanted to see what guilt would do to him, whether he'd confess, whether he'd crumble. Instead, he sat across from me, head in his hands, whispering, "It just happened." And that phrase, "it just happened," broke me in a way I can't describe. Because love doesn't just happen. Neither does betrayal. When we came home 2 days later, Chloe was gone. Her room was spotless, the bed made, not a single trace left behind, except one small envelope on the kitchen counter, addressed to me. Inside was a note, written in her looping handwriting. Laura, I never meant to hurt you. But sometimes love isn't fair. We didn't plan it, it just happened. The same words, the same cowardice. Attached was a photo, her and Ethan at a beach I'd never been to. His arm around her waist, her head on his shoulder, their smiles matching like they'd practiced them together. That was the moment something inside me went very still. Not rage, not grief, just silence. Because I realized if I screamed, if I begged, if I let them break me, they'd win twice. I didn't chase after either of them. Instead, I made myself tea. Jasmine, the one scent Chloe always said reminded her of me. And as I sipped it, I began to plan. Revenge, I've learned, isn't about shouting or breaking things. It's about control. And patience. Ethan still had a joint account with me. The house was in both our names. And the upcoming launch of his company, the one I'd helped fund, was under a partnership we'd both signed.
He didn't just cheat on me.
He built his new life with the money and effort I gave him. So, I didn't confront him again. I smiled. I played along. And when he came home days later, apologetic, teary, saying Chloe had confused him and he wanted to make things right, I let him believe I believed him. For 3 weeks, I pretended. I cooked. I listened. I forgave, at least on the surface. But behind every soft "it's okay," I was building a quiet storm. I contacted a lawyer, the same one who'd helped us draft our partnership contract. She was discreet, sharp, and when I told her what happened, she looked at me with a mix of pity and admiration. "If you're ready to walk away," she said, "do it wisely." Together, we drafted the papers. The day I filed, Ethan thought I was planning a surprise dinner for him. And in a way, I was. That evening, I set the table. His favorite meal, lemon meringue pie and all. When he walked in, he looked relieved, maybe even happy. "Wow," he said, kissing my cheek like nothing had happened. "You went all out." I smiled. "You deserve it." We ate. We talked. And when he reached for dessert, I slid the envelope across the table. He opened it, expecting a love note, maybe forgiveness. Instead, it was the divorce filing. And beside it, a copy of the partnership agreement, now legally dissolved in my favor. He stared at me, face pale. What is this?" I met his eyes, calm. "My version of closure." He stood, voice rising. "You can't do this to me." "I didn't do anything," I said softly. "You did." And before he could speak again, I added, "Oh, and Chloe? You should probably call her. She just posted a photo from Bali with your best friend." He froze, then sank into the chair, hands trembling. For the first time in months, I felt my heartbeat slow, steady, sure. Not from love, from freedom. People think the hardest part of heartbreak is the breaking. It's not. It's the quiet that follows. The mornings when you wake up and forget, just for a second, that everything's changed. And then it hits you all over again. The empty side of the bed. The untouched coffee cup. The way the house still smells like the life you thought you had. For weeks, I drifted through my days like a ghost haunting my own home. Everyone had opinions. "You're better off. She wasn't worth your tears. At least you found out now." But none of them saw what it felt like to lose 2 people you loved, at once. My sister. My husband.
Gone.
Chloe didn't call. Not once. But social media did the talking. Photos of them in Bali, then Greece, then back in London. All smiles and sunlight, like the past had never existed. Every time I scrolled past one, a small part of me wondered, was she happy?
Did she win?
Then I'd remember what my lawyer told me when I signed the final papers. Winning isn't about taking something from them. It's about taking yourself back. So that's what I started doing.
Piece by piece.
I cut my hair. It sounds small, but when the scissors slid through that first lock, it felt like cutting through all the weight of pretending. I sold the house. Moved into a smaller apartment downtown, one with white walls, big windows, and no ghosts. I started painting again. Something I hadn't done since college, before I met Ethan, before life became about what looked perfect instead of what felt real. The first thing I painted was a storm, deep indigo skies, a woman standing in the rain, looking up instead of running for cover. That canvas became my mirror. One morning, about 3 months later, I got a message from an unknown number. It was Chloe. "Laura, I don't expect you to forgive me. But please believe me, Ethan isn't who you think he is. He's not who I thought either." I stared at the screen for a long time. My chest tightened, not from longing, not from pain, but from something quieter.
Pity.
I didn't reply. An hour later, my phone buzzed again. "He's been cheating on me too. I don't know what to do." I typed a response. Then deleted it. Typed again. Deleted again. Finally, I wrote just 4 words. "You already knew how." And then I blocked her. Because some lessons aren't ours to teach twice. A few months passed. The pain didn't vanish, but it changed. It stopped screaming. It started whispering. And sometimes, on good days, it stayed quiet altogether. I joined an art collective, a small community of women who painted, sculpted, and told stories through color and texture. On Thursdays, we met in a loft that smelled of clay and espresso, laughing too loudly and talking too honestly. One day, our mentor, a silver-haired woman named Celeste, looked at my work and said, "Your pain has form now. That means it's no longer just pain. It's transformation." Those words stayed with me. I decided to do something bold, something the old Laura would never dare. I held my first solo exhibition. Theme: What Remains? Each painting told a part of my story: the betrayal, the silence, the rebirth. The centerpiece was the storm painting, the woman in the rain. But this time, I'd added something new: a faint sunrise breaking behind her. That night, as people moved through the gallery, I felt a warmth I hadn't known in years, the kind that comes not from being loved, but from being seen. As I was packing up at the end of the evening, a man approached me. He'd been quiet during the show, standing mostly near the back, studying the storm painting. "I wanted to thank you," he said. "That piece, it felt like you painted it out of my own chest." He introduced himself, Noah, a writer. We talked. Just talked. Not about pain or betrayal, but about art, about stories, about how sometimes losing everything is the only way to see what really matters. He didn't ask about my past, and I didn't offer it. It wasn't a secret, just no longer my headline. Weeks turned into months. Noah and I started seeing each other, slowly, carefully. He never filled the silence with promises or apologies. He just sat with it, with me, and that was enough. One evening, we were walking by the river, when he said, "You know, storms don't destroy everything. Sometimes they clear the sky." I smiled. "And sometimes they wash away what was never meant to stay." He looked at me, really looked, and I realized I wasn't afraid anymore. On the 1-year anniversary of my wedding, or what should have been, I didn't cry. I didn't even remember at first. Until I walked past a florist and saw a bouquet of white lilies, the same ones Chloe and I chose for that day. For a second, the memory flashed, her laughing, me smiling, both of us unaware of what was coming. But instead of pain, I felt gratitude. Because that version of me, the trusting, hopeful one, was brave. And the woman I'd become was too. That night, I stood on my balcony with a glass of wine, watching the city lights flicker below. I opened my journal, the one I started after everything fell apart, and wrote, "Maybe forgiveness isn't about them. It's about freeing yourself from the weight of remembering." I closed it, exhaled, and let the breeze carry the rest away. Somewhere out there, Chloe was probably still chasing the next escape. Ethan was probably still pretending to be someone worth trusting. And me? I wasn't chasing, or pretending, or escaping anymore. I was living. If you've ever been broken by the people who were supposed to protect you, if you've ever loved so deeply that it hollowed you out, remember this. The story doesn't end with betrayal. It begins again with you. Because losing them doesn't mean you lost yourself. It just means you finally made space to find who you really are.